I just released some music over on my other channel, and today I'm just gonna go over like the behind the scenes on how I produced it, what kind of plugins I use, and all that stuff. And I use like completely free plugins for all this, so you can try this at home if you'd like. And yeah, hopefully this inspires you to try to make something on your own, because it's not actually as hard as you think it would. First, just get into like what kind of software I use. You can see we're in Ableton now, using Ableton 12 Lite because that's just what I had, and it was a little restricting because as you can see here, I was limited to like 8 tracks. If I try to add another one, I'm limited by the number of tracks, limited to 8 in this version. But you know, I made do with it, and I think it turned out pretty good at the end. Just going through like the list of tracks that I was working with for this whole medley. Got like drums, synth bass, which is interesting because we had 2 bass players, but I'll get into that later. We got like just a whole clump of tracks in this one channel just called tracks, and then a piano, alto sax, tenor sax, and flute. So for this we had 4 live musicians. The saxes, flute, and bass were all like live recorded, while the rest like drums, synth bass, and the rest of the tracks were created on a software called Flat.io. Here's all the instruments that we had here, like anything from violins, guitars, organs, synth, all that stuff. Most of it I just had clumped in this one channel here, but I made some exemptions for like synth bass and piano just because I wanted to process those differently. And I think if you wanted to check out this score, if I remember it, I'll have it linked on the main music video, but hopefully I remember that. I'm just gonna go through like each individual channel, like what kind of processing I put on it, and then also master chain, which kind of just helped glue everything together and made it what it was. Starting out with a drum track here, the first thing I put on was just a standard compressor, and this was aimed to only get like the very peaks of like kick and snare, just to like tame them a little bit so they weren't like too out of hand. Not that much gain reduction. I'll just play a little bit here. You see like just like 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction, so it's really not that much. And then next here is a very important plugin that I use on both the drums and both bass tracks, called the BX Subfilter by, Plugin Alliance. I just have the free version of the plugin here. There's like an expanded one they have to pay for, but I just chose to go with the free one. I didn't pay for like any plugins used in this video because I just don't think you need to use like paid plugins to get like a decent mix. There's a lot of good free stuff out there. So you can see I have the plugin here, and I really just wanted to target the kick with this because this plugin like targets the very low end of an instrument. You can see I have it set here for 55 hertz, and it just adds a lot of like body and oomph to it. I don't really know how else to describe it, but adds a lot of character to the kick in particular. It's gonna give you a sample of like with and without it. So this is the kick drum without it, and I turn it on. You can just hear it has a lot more body to it, a lot more character. And then next, just going to EQ here. I chose the TDO Nova because again, it's free and just very flexible. You can do a lot with it, so it's great. Here, just like a little boost around 200 for some warmth, and then a little high-end boost just to target those like hi-hat and cymbals. And then just a low cut around 300 to get rid of like some of the muddiness, like some of the frequencies you just don't really want. Had a second EQ, just like targeting more of the upper mids here, just bringing out a little more clarity. And of course after that, gotta have a reverb on the drums. I chose to do a gated reverb on this. It's kind of like personal preference if you want it gated or not. It just means that after like the drum is hit, then the reverb like cuts off quicker, if I'm understanding that correctly. Yeah, of course, just put a high pass on it because like all the percussion was just grouped in this one channel here. I had to put a high pass around like 160 just so the kick drum wasn't affected by the reverb, because you don't really want reverb on a kick drum. It just loses a lot of its low end and like punchiness if it just has a ton of reverb on it. And then finally in the chain, that would be a common theme with I think every single track here, is just a limiter and having it on the maximize setting. It's actually a new limiter in Ableton, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, it just brings it up to an equal volume, and I think I had it clip on like just 1 dB of gain reduction, just like the tiniest little bit. Well, not compression, limiter is different, but like, you know what I mean. Just gonna listen to the drums first, like without any kind of processing on it. It's just like a little bit hollow, missing some sparkle, but then I turn all this processing on. you know, it's got that body, it's got that sparkle, it needs to have that sparkle. Of course, the reverb is doing a lot for that, and yeah, sounds pretty good. Next, moving on to the synth bass track. The reason why I had this mostly is because Phoenix, one of the bass players, there's myself and Phoenix playing bass. His parts were a lot more higher up on the neck, which made me choose to put a sub bass here just to like have some of those fundamentals. When he's playing up or like higher on the neck, it just loses a lot of body. Like it sounds good, obviously, like it's very defined, but I just want to make sure that you always have that bass foundation set. So that's what this is doing. And processing, not really doing too much on it. I did add a little bit of saturation just to give it some like harmonic richness, just a little bit. This is probably one of the most important things you can do on any bass track, and it's a sidechain compressor. So because of the way I had to have this set up with the drums all in one track, I had the compressor set for 80 hertz and below. So whenever the drum, like any signal from the drum track is detected to be at 80 hertz or below, aka a kick drum, then it triggers a sidechain compressor, which kind of just makes the bass like duck a little bit. And the reason why we want to do that is because we want the kick to stand out. Like you want to feel the kick in your chest, and you don't want the bass like making that low and all muddy. And just to give you like a visual representation, you can see like whenever the kick drum is hitting, just as a little duck on the synth bass. And not like a crazy amount of gain reduction. Like you don't want to like totally squash the bass, but just give enough room for the kick to have the space that it should have. After that, just a tiny little low end boost, not much going on. And of course the limiter. Going on to the bass channel, this is probably one of the trickiest ones I had to deal with, because we had like two bass players with very different styles. We had Phoenix, he played very lightly, he played fingers, while I like went full on rock mode with a pick. So of course I had to process them very differently. But Phoenix's processing actually did that in a separate project altogether. This project right here is kind of just where I had like everyone recorded into. Like here I think was my alto sax recordings, then we had like a bunch of bass recordings, tenor sax, flute. It's just kind of a cluttered mess, but it just helped me stay organized. I have everything in different projects, so the main project I could just have clean and easier to put it together. Because we had two different bass players, I decided to like process Phoenix's bass in this project and then bring it together with my bass and have like the same processing in the main template. Because for Phoenix, I had him just record clean because of his playing style. I just didn't really know what kind of processing I'd want to put on it at the time. While as for me, like I've done many like bass covers before, so I know what my tone sounds like. I know how to set up my pedal board. So I recorded from my pedal board with all my effects on there. As for Phoenix, which is completely clean. So then looking at all the bass processing here, I don't think I actually used most of this stuff. I think it's just here as a placeholder. But the main stuff that is important is I have an instance of ToneX, which I guess is technically like the one software that is paid. It's just because I have it for free because I bought the ToneX pedal for my board. But yeah, for Phoenix's bass, I decided to go a model from Tanner Erickson that I bought like a little while ago. And it's like a combination of the Aguilar tone hammer and the Solo Dallas Bass X pedals, which is just like a super nasty combination. It sounds awesome. And because he was like a very light player, I wanted to bring out a lot of like gritty mid-range to help him stick out, because otherwise he would get like very lost in the mix. So you're here and just admit that his tone was like very dirty, very distorted, very mid-range heavy, and that's just kind of what I had to do to make him like stick out more. And then on Phoenix as well, I just did some cuts in EQ, like 360, 900-ish, 3K, just like not amazing frequencies on bass, so just cutting some of those things out. So then if you go back to the main project, we had the processing that was both put on Phoenix's bass and my own bass track. So I was going to take a listen at both of them individually. As you can see, I have everything off here. Just going to listen to Phoenix's bass with that ToneX plugin and the EQ. Well, I'm going to turn everything else off. Just take a listen to Phoenix's bass quickly. I realized I had the synth bass on, but anyways, you can hear it's like super dirty, just super raw, and it helped him stick out more. Of course, it put a lot of help on with the plugins I had here. I realized I was just looking at the drum plugins here, but now actually on the bass channel, I had the phase inverter. I'm not really gonna get into that. It's just because the way some things were recorded, I had to like flip the phasing on it, but that's not really important for this. Use the same plugin as on the kick drum, but instead of having around like 44 hertz, it's just like a good area for bass in general. Just to, again, add in that body, add in that warmth, super good plugin. Here I had another instance of Tonex, and here I'm just running Ampeg, SVT, add a little natural compression, add some like sparkly high into it. It's a pretty good model, and it's just like a clean amp, which helped like tame both of our dirty signals a little bit. Then another EQ, just bringing out a little bit of lower around 120, cutting out that 450. That's just not really good on bass at all. But you don't want to cut it too much because there's still like some fundamental frequencies that are important. You just don't want to hear them as much. But then next had a little boost around 1K, help it stick out a little bit more. And then here is the sidechain compressor on this bass channel. And as you see, just around like 4 to 5 dB gain reduction, nothing like too crazy, just a limiter and off the chain. And this is the bass without any processing. And processing it. Could also listen to my bass recording here without any processing. This is just coming straight from my pedal board with Tonex and compressor, basically. And then this is it with the processing. As I already explained when talking about Phoenix's bass, I just wanted like a super dirty bass tone for this, especially in this part here where it's like, you can hear the drums here. Just very rock style, super aggressive. That's just kind of how I wanted it. Moving on, this is a little more tricky. The giant channel of tracks, there's probably like 15 different instruments just grouped in this one channel, which of course is not ideal. Of course I'd want the opportunity to like pan guitars around or like add different EQs and stuff, but just kind of had to work with what I had. Processing on this, I just widened it a little bit, give a little more spatial stuff going on. You see here that I have another sidechain compressor, though this time it's not linked to the drums, but it's linked to a tenor sax. Now, why would I want to sidechain compress a bunch of tracks with the lead instrument? That's because I was having some issues with lead instruments like alto sax and tenor sax. They weren't like sticking out as much as I needed them to. They were kind of just getting lost in the muddiness of everything. So what I did is I took a sidechain compressor around like 2K-ish, and whenever tenor sax was playing, then all the tracks here would just dip a tiny little bit. Give you an example. You see like just like 1.5 dB gain reduction. Not much, but it just helps those lead instruments stick out in the frequency that matters most for them, around like 2K. Then after that, just a little bit of EQ on here, getting rid of some 1500. That was also to help with the clarity thing, helping these stick out a little bit more. And after that, added a little bit of saturation, just giving some life to like all the tracks. And then, of course, you gotta have a reverb. That's the timings, milliseconds, pre-delay and decay that just worked with the timing of this song. Though it was a little bit of a challenge because the BPM changes like several times throughout this medley, so I had to like kind of find like a middle ground for all the reverb timings here. And then of course just a limiter to end off the chain. So I'm gonna show you how these sounded without any processing on them. And processing it. Not too much of a difference, but everything here just adds like a little touch that adds up, you know. Next we got the piano track, and the reason why I decided to process this differently from the rest of the tracks is because it has some like solos of its own, 2 spots at the beginning and here. So I just want to make sure that it had the proper processing and also levels as well. You can see I had this at -7.5, all this at -3, just because I needed this to stand out, because obviously it's a lead instrument at 2 separate intervals. Processing for this, just simple, widening it a little bit of an EQ. I had a low shelf at 75, just because like I didn't want any like potential rumbling from the piano clashing with any bass or kick drum. Just didn't want to deal with that, so I just cut it off so it's not causing any issues down there. Though I did add a little boost at 180 just to make sure it still had some body to it, and then just adding a little clarity around 1500. Here's a very similar situation to the tracks with the sidechain compressor. I had this one tied to the alto sax. It didn't really matter, but same deal, just like whenever these guys are playing, I wanted them to be heard in not the piano. The piano is supposed to be heard here, not here. And of course, just touch of saturation, like 0.3, not doing much. Gotta have the reverb. Why would you not put a reverb on a piano? I don't know. I'm not a piano expert. There's probably situations why you wouldn't put a reverb on a piano that I'm not aware of. This is the piano without any processing on it, if I could remember how to use the software. And processing it. And yeah, you can see I did have the limiter just cutting it off a little bit. There was a little bit of compression from the sidechain compressor, but still just wanted a touch more, so I had the limiter doing that. Moving on to lead instruments, we had an alto sax, tenor sax, and flute as kind of a lead instruments. First going off with alto sax, which I played, so no biases here. Starting off at the phase inverter, again, not really getting into that, but was having some phase issues. Yeah, so just widening it a little bit, just to give it a little more space. And I had two compressors going on here. I had one at a 4:1 ratio, which is a little bit more aggressive compression, and then one at a 3:1 just to add a touch bit more. And you can see by the waveforms here that like both me and Ty were like not that controlled with the sax playing. Like there's a lot of dynamic variation. So in the context of the mix, we just want to make sure everything's very tightly knit. So I'll show you how much compression I had going on here. First one just around like 3 to 5 dB, and then this one's just cutting off like the very tips. Next, of course, gotta have a little bit of a saturator. Love this plugin. It's just a soft loop saturation knob. It's free. It's the most simple plugin you could ever use, and it just does what you need it to do. And for EQ, just cutting out a little bit of 400. I don't know, something about 400, just ain't it. Of course, have some like upper mids and some high-end boosts here just for extra clarity and just giving some air. It's probably not noticeable, but I did add a little bit of delay to it. It just sounds cool. It's not that noticeable, but worth noting. Of course, gotta have the reverb. It's essential. It's a saxophone. Why would you not put reverb on it? And just ending it off with the limiter. And just to give you the before and after. This is it without any kind of processing on it. Processing in. Sounds pretty good if I say so myself. No bias. Moving on to tenor sax, it's basically the same as the alto sax. Got the two compressors, saturator, EQ slightly different, just because the tenor sax targets different frequencies. Yeah, more or less just the same thing. Give you the before and after. Processing it. You can see by the waveforms here, like Ty especially just had a lot of dynamic variation, which of course was like fantastic. But for producing, just gotta make sure it's controlled, you know, so that's why, again, we had the two compressors for that. Moving on, finally, we have the flute, which was definitely the most challenging because a flute player was using a rental flute, I believe, and it was having a lot of tuning issues. You can see I have an auto-tune set up here. And I was having issues where sometimes your flute would go like a full semitone above or below where it should be. So going back to the other project where I had a recording too, I decided to do like a lot of the auto-tune and processing in this project just to make my life simpler in the main project. So here on the flute track here, just widening it again, and I had a very aggressive auto tuner. It was necessary. There's no really way around it. If she wasn't in tune, it just makes the entire mix sound like very dissonant, which of course is not good. So I had to do what I had to do to fix it. Of course, just compressors, squash the dynamics a little bit. I mean, you want to set up your compressors in a way where like the dynamics are still like very prevalent, but not so much that like it's very jarring when someone just like in your face. Just want to keep everything nice and controlled. Same deal, saturator, EQ setup here, boosting here, just to give some body, some mid-range cuts, a little bit of high-end sparkle, delay, reverb, limiter, all that same stuff again. Gonna go back to the main project now. Just gonna take a quick listen to what the flute sounded like without any of this processing going on, and so I had everything going on from the last project. Oh, and I should mention that because of all the auto-tune shenanigans I had to put on this, it did sound like very robotic in a way. So what I did is I took the flute track from flat and I combined it with the live flute recording. It just helped it sound a little bit more natural, which is weird. Using a MIDI track to make a live recording sound more natural is just what I had to do for this. I did decide to add a couple more compressors here. It was also compressing the flat like flute track as well, so it just made sense to also compress both of them together, and especially because of the flute like sounding as robotic as it was, I didn't want that sticking out in the full mix too much. Moving on to the master chain here. The first thing that I see here is just a saturator, but this time I have it set on the keep high end. So what that means is that it's giving saturation to all the low ends from the entire mix. This just helps with like a bass, kick drum, everything, just to have the harmonics a little more audible. And then here I have an audio effects rack divided into two sections. What I did, if I pull up this EQ, is I split the entire frequency range into two sections. I have 0 Hz to 5K, and if I open this side up, then I have everything from 5K and up processed differently. The reason why I did that is because of this plugin right here, the Ozone Imager 2. Also a free plugin. It's a super cool mastering trick that I found from ChatGPT, to be honest. But what it does is it basically takes everything from 5K and above as I split it up to be. You can see there's like a width toggle here. I don't know exactly how to explain it. Maybe if I just play something, then you can get like a little bit more of a visual representation. So it's taking all these high-end frequencies and just kind of like spreading them out in a way. Again, I'm not exactly sure how to explain it, but it's a super cool plugin. It makes your high end sound like so much better. After that, I just had a very slight compression on everything, tie everything in a little bit. I had about like, hold on, if I turn everything on, go back to the master chain, you can see just about like 2.5 dB of gain reduction, and yeah, it's a very low ratio, like a pretty fast attack. I just had the release on auto because I didn't really trust myself. I didn't really know what to set it as, so I was just like able to take the wheel. Anyways, after that, basically I just put like a low pass and a high pass, tame the very low end a little bit. Those frequencies that don't really do a whole lot, they're just like noise and like excess energy that don't do anything for the actual sound. And I did have a very like 1 dB boost at the high end just to help with the sparkliness of the mix as a whole. And of course I had the maximized limiter just to make sure that everything wasn't like too loud, because things can sound like very distorted or whatever if the volume is too loud. So this just literally contained the entire mix. So it's super important to have a limiter at the end of your master chain. So yeah, that's basically how I produced this. If you want to check out this full song for yourself, I'll link it on the end card of this video. It's on my other channel, so make sure to go check it out. Hope this was helpful in some way, and yeah, go out and produce something on your own. Like honestly, this was my first like big production of this size. I've never done anything like this before, but it was like super fun to learn how to like put all this together because I've never done anything like this. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.